Hello from Silverstone, dear Motorsport-Magazin.com friends and Formula One fans. It's media day, and of course the dominant topic was still Lando Norris versus Max Verstappen and what happened just under a week ago at the Red Bull Ring. Immediately after the race, Lando Norris had demanded an apology from Max Verstappen. There was obviously no such apology, but it was no longer necessary, because Norris, who was sitting in the press conference today, and he seemed very level-headed, he said, well, that was the first emotion, everything he said there, directly after the race. Maybe he didn't really mean it. He was frustrated, was full of adrenaline and the emotions. And that's why he's saying now, yes, this apology, it's not really necessary. In hindsight, he judges the scene quite differently, or the scenes, it has to be said correctly. He says, it was already at the limit, but it was actually good racing. He also realized that you have to drive a little differently against Max Verstappen than against the other drivers in the field. Max drives differently, but that also makes him what he is, namely a champion, and Lando Norris has realized that. In the meantime, he has also been told that by many experts, Max Verstappen didn't really hold it against his friend either. You have to say his friend, because the two have had a good friendship for many years. And that, says Verstappen, is the most important thing. It doesn't matter at all whether he got a penalty for it or not. He says the most important thing for him is that the relationship between the two of them continues to work. And it does. The two of them spoke on the phone Monday after the race and then again on Wednesday. They analyzed the whole thing. They are 99% in agreement. That's quite a lot for two such alpha animals. And that's why it's all good, both for Verstappen and for Norris. The good news for all of us, for Formula One fans, for racing fans, is that they don't want to change their driving style in the future. Both have said, we want to continue flat out against each other. They both saw that there was only minimal contact. It was really bad luck that it had such consequences, especially for Norris, because maybe Norris also had to ask himself the way he drove back into the pits, whether it could have been done a bit slower, like Verstappen. So that's why it's all easy, all good. And it will continue like this. Norris also said, yes, there was still room on the left. Maybe he should have driven a bit on the basket. There was also a scene in the past between Verstappen and Leclerc that was quite similar. But they took the basket and nothing happened in the end. The relationship is good, peace, joy, pancakes. That's almost a bit much by Formula One standards. And you ask yourself, is that even possible? Friendship between two drivers who are fighting for victory? Verstappen says, yes, the emotional situation was perhaps a little different for him. For him it was his second, or would have been his second victory. For me it was my 60th. That's why it's a bit different. But what if there really is something at stake for both of them, more than just a race win, the World Championship? There have been many examples in the history of Formula One that friendship is no longer so far away. The most recent example, of course, Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton. But Verstappen says yes, it depends on the people, and he does believe that it can work between him and Norris. I'm looking forward to it, because if it really comes down to the wire, then it's a different situation than just a race win. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure that the two of them will clash a few more times. What happened at the Red Bull Ring wasn't just a big issue between Verstappen and Norris, but also with the other drivers. They obviously watched the scene. They also saw that the stewards handed down a penalty, and actually everyone here in the paddock agrees that it should not have been penalized. They say there are simply too many rules. They are not official rules. They are rules that the teams and drivers have drawn up together with the FIA. There are no regulations that are publicly visible. But it's more or less just a catalogue where they've determined what is okay and what is not okay. Some drivers don't even know them by heart. But most of them say it doesn't matter anyway. We don't think about it. According to the regulations, I'm allowed to do this or this or this. You don't think that in the World Championship fight, Fernando Alonso told us, whether you have to be there with the front wing or there. No, it's about the feeling. It's about simply what you've been doing in the car all your life. And there are just too many rules for that. I'm curious to see whether they will now slowly start to roll backwards again. There were some dissatisfied people after the Austrian weekend, including Nico Hülkenberg. He said the stewards had generally interfered a little too much. After all, he received a penalty after the sprint. 10 seconds and 2 penalty points. Even the accident opponent, it wasn't directly. But his opponent, Fernando Alonso, said that the penalty points he received were completely unnecessary. He is generally a bit at war with the penalty points and says they were introduced for something completely different, for really dangerous drivers to take them out of circulation. But it's not about dangerous driving. It's about the fact that you misjudge a bit. It doesn't even happen sometimes, and yet there are still these penalty points, so there is certainly still some catching up to do and a need for discussion. I'm curious to see how things will go in the driver briefing. It could probably be a bit longer, also because of the track limits. Lando Norris also got a 5-second penalty. He served it for track limits, which is very important. Otherwise, there would have been a discussion as to whether he might have received a penalty here. That's definitely off the table. But the matter as such is not off the table because he left the track while trying to overtake. That was then assessed. Now it's getting a bit busy here, so don't get distracted. The fans are chasing Lando Norris. That was judged as a track limit violation. He had already been black and white flagged 3 times before, and therefore got the 5 seconds on top. That's why we can be happy that the collision actually happened, because at least the race was decided on the track and not on the green table. But all the drivers have said that it's complete nonsense to hand out a penalty when you've made a mistake anyway. Then you won't attack in future, you won't even try to overtake. And that's one point of the track limits. The other is qualification. You all heard about what happened to Oscar Piastri. There could be similar situations here. They've made improvements to the track here too. Gravel sheets, white lines and so on. So everything is going in the right direction. But now you still have to find the right way to assess it when there are borderline situations like this. You know my opinion, I'm in favor of just letting it run and that's it. Self-policing tracks when you hit the gravel with 2 wheels. Spectacular pictures, you don't have an advantage. It's wonderful if you maybe lose a 10th there. But the lap time really doesn't need to be deleted. But as always, it's not that simple. Before we come to the Formula 1 driver market, let's talk about you. Because you can change too. We are once again looking for new staff at Motorsport-Magazin in Graz. Perhaps you would like to join our editorial team, for example, as an intern. Writing, manage tickers, or make videos, for example. All information is available at jobs.motorsportmagazine.com. But now to the Formula 1 driver market. Breaking news this morning, Ollie Bearman has been confirmed at Haas. He will be driving in Formula 1 for the next few years. This was again announced in a somewhat cryptic manner. No contract duration, just a multi-year contract. Of course, this comes as no surprise. Ollie Bearman is Ferrari Junior, has also driven for Carlos Sainz in Saudi Arabia this season. He has also already completed training sessions for Haas. Incidentally, Kevin Magnussen has another FP1 this weekend. He has a total of 6 outings this year. So that was to be expected. Nevertheless, the Formula 2 performances don't really justify that. 14th position for him in the championship. Sure, he missed Saudi Arabia due to his Formula 1 commitment, but somehow the worm is in there. Ayao Komatsu, the team boss, told us he doesn't actually look at these Formula 2 results. He saw the race in Saudi Arabia, he sees the races at Haas, and therefore he doesn't care what he delivers in Formula 2. But you naturally ask yourself the question, how important is Formula 2 really still? Quite a strange season. Andrea Kimi Antonelli, his Prema teammate, is only in 9th place and is also very highly rated in Formula 1. Of course, Prema is having a bit of trouble with the new car this season. Things are not really going well, but the rest of the season is also quite strange. With the other drivers, Paul Aron, the overall leader, for example, still completely without a win. So it's kind of difficult to judge. Somehow you have to ask yourself the question, what kind of shape is Formula 2 in? But as I said, it's not entirely surprising. Kevin Magnussen has said himself, he's actually known for 4 months that this would happen. Of course, it will be tight for him. The question is, who will be the second driver? Definitely not a rookie. Komatsu has already made that clear. Magnussen is, of course, a candidate, but the hottest candidate is probably Esteban Ocon, who is definitely out at Alpine. And we are still talking about personnel changes. There are also changes at Aston Martin. It was only recently announced that Andy Cowell is joining the team as CEO of the group. He will take over from Martin Whitmarsh on October 1st. And that's quite a big appointment because Andy Cowell, who was head of engines at Mercedes throughout the hybrid era until 2020, then he disappeared. And nobody really knew what he was doing. He was repeatedly linked to other teams, especially engine manufacturers, but then never appeared anywhere. He was like a phantom. And now suddenly Aston Martin has announced that Andy Cowell is coming back to Formula 1 as Group Managing Director. That's a great appointment, and I'm curious to see if he can turn things around. After all, things haven't been looking good at Aston Martin recently. They are, after the interim high last year, they have fallen a long way back. And that's exactly what our current print edition, issue number 97, is all about. On the one hand, the top teams. On the other hand, the decline of Aston Martin. The decline of Aston Martin. All about it in the new print edition of abo.motorsportmagazine.com. And me, my own picture of Aston Martin again, because we're heading over there right now. The Aston Martin factory is just a stone's throw away from the racetrack. We can all pop in there today to see what has changed since last year. Now, if you're still wondering what's going on there, it's not so bad, don't worry. It will all pass again. Just like the good weather, you can still see a bit of blue sky. It won't look so spectacular here for the next few days. Of course, that makes what happens on the track all the more spectacular. The stage is set for a Great British Grand Prix 2025.